shine so light. Like, oh, that's too light. Oh my god. That thing is too light.
You said we're live now, right?
Yeah, you live now.
Okay, well, let's not worry about that. Good evening, folks out there in YouTube land or wherever you're getting your internet service or streaming service. This is Uncle Charlie's Corner. This is going to be our debut in going live. So if you see a couple of things that you know they're major mistakes, we apologize now. But this is a serious topic that we are going to deal with tonight. And I'm telling you right now, it just might be a two-part show. We are going to talk about the topic of death, timely or untimely. And the reason, let me just give you a little background. Why I decided, oh, excuse me, which one do you have? Okay, sorry about that, folks. I have to put my headphones on. Like I said, you know this is right now. Okay, how is that? Our producer, Dog, if you could just turn that music down or off, lower it. Okay. Again, Uncle Charlie's Corner. I'm your host. I'm Charles E. Treadway III, my Christian name. But at the age of almost 57 years old, I now go by Uncle Charlie. Get a little reverb in my ears.
Oh, okay. Oh,
like I was saying earlier, folks.
You might want to face one of those mics to you. Because it sounds like you're in the hallway.
Okay, how's that? Like I said, folks, this is live. It's not Memorex. Okay, so there are going to be some things that we are trying to clear up. Just lower the monitor in my headphones. Beautiful. Thank you, sir. Okay, like I said, the subject tonight is death, and probably a lot of you are wondering why could you pick such a subject? And I'm going to tell you why right now. About 2 days ago, my fiance, Darlene and I, and she's going to join us in a few minutes. We picked up a friend of hers, and we took her on her appointments on Mondays, we usually do. But we had also knew that she had lost someone that was very close to her. Her usual vivacious and bouncing and joking self was not that way. She was very stoic, said very little. Even though we both expressed our condolences, Darlene was on the phone with her most of the night. She was still not that person. I don't want to really give her a name. She was not that person that we knew to love life. And this is where I got the subject, death, timely or untimely. Usually when we bury a parent, like I've buried both of mine, it'll be 25 years ago for my mother next month, April 19th. She passed away at 8:40. Yes, I remember the exact time. I can tell you exactly what went on that last day of her life. And my father, who passed away on August 5th of 2002, 6 years later after my mother passed. Death that affects us in ways that we know, in ways that we do not know, that we could survive the process. When my mother passed away, I was a wreck. And I think most of you could atone to that when you lose your mother or you lost that person who was that close to you. Some of you out there may have been raised by your grandmothers or your aunts or your uncles or your grandparents. But in this case, I'm talking about my mother. My mother was my rock. My mother was my friend, my best friend. I could talk to my mother about anything. And when I needed a shoulder to cry on, Mama was always there. So I know a lot of you guys out there know that. when I speak about my mama. I'm not saying mother, I'm saying my mama. I think you could agree or sympathize with what I just said. There's a process that they say that you go through. There's a process of grief. There's a process of anger. There's a process of questioning God or whoever you believe to be your spiritual guider. And then you come to be able to deal with the process of grief. For some, it is a little bit, I don't want to say quicker, but they can deal with the process faster than others can. For me, it was basically a year-long process. I basically climbed into a bottle for about a year until one day, one of my mother's friends had spoken to me and basically brought it down the way my mother would bring it down. Look yourself in the mirror and would you like what you see? And I did not like what I saw. And that helped me clean up my act. My mother didn't raise a fool. She knew she knew that I loved her, but it was her time to go. And that, so to speak, was a timely death. I did not want to accept it, but I had to. And I had to go on with my life. About a year later, I got married. And about a year after that, I had my first and only child, Samantha. When my father died, it was more business. He had already known that I had gone through the grief process with my mother, as he had done previously with his mother in 1985. Losing a mother is hard. Usually the mother is the rock of the household, the one that holds things together. But when you are little, from the crib to growing up to manhood or adulthood, I will say that your mother makes sure that the God that we worship is the cornerstone of your life. So whether you stray, you will always come back because the love of God is there for you. Jesus died for you. This young lady that I'm referring to that died, well, I didn't even say that, but unfortunately she passed away. She was struck down in the middle of a street in New Haven, Connecticut. No one knew what was wrong with her. Obviously, people always want to think that, oh, it had to be drugs or it had to be this, because the fact is her death was unexpected. She passed away from a massive aneurysm. And for those of you who do not know what that term means, she died of a stroke. She hung on as long as she could. Her loved ones said goodbye to her. But unfortunately, last night she passed away at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I think she really hung on because she was daddy's little girl. Most of you might see the sign behind me. It's a fixture on the Uncle Charlie Corner show because it is how my life was saved. I could have been an untimely death because I would have passed away at the age of 48. But burying a young girl at the age of 34, 14, 16, 22, the ages vary. And when it's murder by whatever circumstances, or if it is by, unfortunately, illness, it is still a hard process to go through. And I want to dedicate this show. The young lady's name was Easter, just like what we celebrate. And I know she's not feeling any more pain. My donor passed away from a massive aneurysm, so I could sympathize with the family. Timely or untimely? Are you ready? Does your family know your wishes if you are called away by either unfortunate circumstances or what some people like to say, circumstances that basically are not your control? If you're an older person or you died of an illness, like I explained before. Right now, I'm going to introduce you to a person that's a very important part of my life. I've known her for over 42, 43 years. That she has recently come back into my life after 3 years. Her husband had passed away, and we now are engaged to be married. Unfortunately, her husband passed away from an untimely death that was kind of expected because he died of cancer. And the grief process that she had to go through was extremely difficult. I just came out of a bad marriage, and there was a lot of circumstances with that. So it was basically God bringing two people back together again. Darlene, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you, hon. One of the reasons, folks, that I asked Darlene to join me this evening is because Darlene is a person who has basically dealt with death since she was a little child. And the reason she dealt with death, because that was her family's business. She is the fifth generation of a funeral home owner. The person you have to go to when you want to make sure that your loved one gets the proper send-off. Darlene, you heard me describe a little bit about Easter's passing. Could you kind of let the folks out there know, what is it like when they have to go to a funeral director? What do you sit down and talk about? Getting out of the coffin and every other thing like that. We'll get into financials later. But what is basically when you get that phone call that a family wants your service? Please bring our viewers and listeners into that step.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you, Charlie, for having me on, and also Dog. First of all, the notification goes to the funeral home from either the family, the hospital, or the nursing home. After that, either the loved one is picked up from this hospital, or the medical examiner if it needs to have an autopsy. Okay? Then we schedule a planning meeting for the family to sit down and discuss all aspects of the funeral arrangements. Okay. And that goes from life insurance, if there's any life insurance, all the way to the embalming of the body, or if not, if they don't want embalming. Also the visitation, if they're going to have a wake, that is also discussed. The writing of the obituary, the readings that will be done at the church or the synagogue. If there's going to be a eulogy, memorial boards, which is they pick out pictures and they hand it to us, and then we design a memorial board. Also, the limos, if they're going to have limos, also the hearse is also done. And if they're going to have a reception or a lot of people today, they don't have receptions. They just also do grave services. Okay. And that's another major thing that has been happening lately. Also, if the person was in the military or any organizations, we handle that also.
Okay. Let me stop you there. There's a couple of questions I want to ask you. Now, you talked about if the family wants the body embalmed or it doesn't want the body embalmed. Now, could there still be a open casket ceremony, so to speak, And does that
Yes.
speed up the service? Let's say instead of maybe a couple of days or the end of the week or next week, does that speed up the ceremony to a couple of days because of decomposition of the body?
Yes. What usually happens is the body is held in cold storage. The body is not able to sit out that long. The most the body can sit out is like 4 hours to be viewed, and then the body has to be put back into cold storage. And then what happens, that's if they don't embalm the body. If they do embalm the body, there's no problem. The body will stay total viewing.
Okay. Now, you said when you get the phone call and you're instructed to either go to the hospital or the medical examiner's office to pick up the body, what instances, I know that there are old wives' tales that people don't want a autopsy because the body won't be put back intact, or they're afraid that they can't have a viewing for their loved ones to be able to say goodbye. Could you explain that process?
Sure. Well, first of all, if the body, if there's an unforeseen violent situation, like on the streets of Bridgeport or on the streets of New Haven, if it's a killing and everything or a murder, it definitely needs an autopsy. There is no way of getting around that, you know. Mm-hmm. If it's a untimely death and they feel as though there could be some foul play and all, they will order an autopsy for that, and that is taken care of through the state of Connecticut.
Okay, so that's not an out-of-pocket expense for the family.
No, absolutely not. No.
Okay, let me ask you this one question since you kind of brought that up. There are instances now, and I will say it as an untimely death, because we see more and more, unfortunately, and that's not just in Connecticut. We see it all over the United States.
Yes.
When a family does not have the resources to bury their loved one, under any kind of circumstances, you might see a lot of people go on GoFundMe. How much, well, I put it this way. When we buried my grandmother, her funeral was roughly about $2,500, and that included the coffin and everything that you talked about, the embalming of the body, the limo, and everything like that. When we buried my mother, and that was in 1996, the cost went up to about $10,000, roughly $10,500. And my father said his wife, my mother, my sister's mother, deserved to go out. We had wakes. There were 2 wakes, one from 3 to 5, another one in the evening from 7 to 9. Then we buried her the next day. Why is it that funerals, basically, you might have the wake and the funeral all in one day? Now, is that because of economics, or basically because of so many people dying now of timely and untimely circumstances?
Well, first of all, it's regarding the budget of the family also. Okay? You have to think of like a family that's in mourning that doesn't have much money. Mm-hmm. If we could put the funeral, the morning, the viewing, the morning of the funeral, right? Mm-hmm. That is just a short period of time where we just charge for the short period of time. Then we charge for the service to go to the church. Then we charge the service to go to the cemetery. Okay, if you do 2 or 3 days, which most Italian families do, and I'm Italian, I can say that, they will turn around and say they want 3 days, and that is basically from what has been happening in Italy. They believe that they want it to be longer so they could spend their last times with them. It basically goes by what you can afford.
Okay, that's a good question. Now, to say, and I know you deal with all religions, so folks don't think, I know we have to be PC today, but her business, her family business has done many funerals from all over the gamut. Now, you referred to Jewish people, and if I'm correct, that funeral has to take place basically within 24 hours. Is that correct?
Yes, within 24 hours. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, there's another one which is Muslim, and I think we had discussed one time Pakistani or anything like that. Isn't there like symbols or something like that that have to be changed on the wall as not to offend another family?
Yes, that is true. Yes.
And could you tell us just a little bit about that?
Well, basically, they don't like to leave the body at all.
Mm-hmm.
They feel as though they need to sit with the body, and so does the Jewish faith at one point. If you're Hasidic Jews, they sit with the body until it's buried. If you're Muslim, they do the same thing.
Okay. Now, you say sit with the body. They are actually in the funeral home with the body or leave a designated guard, so to speak, with the body.
Yes.
That is legal in the states, in all 50 states?
Yes, it is. Yes, in all 50 states, yes. In the bylaws of the funeral directors, bylaws of the United States, yes, that they have the right to do that. But the thing is, a full-time funeral director and an assistant has to be in the funeral home with the family. They cannot just lock up the funeral home and just let the family stay there. That's against the law. But you have to have the funeral directors in the funeral home with them and stay with them all night long.
Okay. And you know I love movies, and we've kind of seen this scene in some of the movies that I enjoy. I remember one with John Candy where he played a Chicago police officer, and his girlfriend worked in a funeral home. And his buddies had snuck the body out of the funeral home and brought him to a bar to have a last drink. Is that something that you have dealt with during your years in the business?
To be honest with you, yes, especially the Irish families have done that to us, yes.
Okay. Obviously that it's not orthodox, but how do you deal with the situation? You're dealing with somebody that's mourning, but they don't want to break their promise to the dead.
Well,
stop laughing back there.
I'm trying to be nice about this too. What you have to do is basically you have to call the police, and the police have to go with you to pick up the remains of the body from the family, because legally you can't touch that body. In the state of Connecticut, you can't touch that body because they took the body out of the casket and they brought it to party. So you can't do anything until you have a police officer with you.
Wow. Dog, you have any questions you want to ask? I see that a lot of our listeners they like this conversation. What
you can ask them.
If you have any questions, please type in your question. And Dog will, our producer, he will relay it to me. If I happen to catch it, I will relay it to him. We're gonna. MVP is calling in. Could you please tell him to call in on your line?
Okay.
And so we could have him. He might have some things he wants to ask. And like I said, folks, this looks like this is going to be a two-parter because there are a lot of things that are discussed. And what I referred to before I brought Darlene in, and I'm going to ask her this delicate part. When my mother passed away, I was a wreck. I basically wanted to make sure that she was born in a blue casket, that she was buried in a blue casket. And there was a couple of readings that she loved. Now, have you ever had circumstances where the family is sitting down to discuss what they want in the services?
Yo, D, tell Troy that I'm on the phone.
I got
when
you.
He's finished.
I got you, dude. I got you. Hold on one second, Em.
Okay.
Where there are circumstances where and I'm putting this nicely, that the factions cannot agree on the service or how they want their loved one remembered, and let's just say all hell breaks loose.
Oh, yes. We've had the police called about 8 or 9 times. It has gotten out of hand, yes.
For a funeral or a wake?
Yeah, for a wake, yes. Yes, we had a wife and a girlfriend get out of complete control, and the wife did not know the girlfriend was going to show up.
Oh, so the man had a family, which we'll say legally, and had another family that the wife didn't know about. Whoa! Yes. So you mean to tell me that the loved one's business really came out at its home going?
Well, it ended up to be a brawl, and we made the newspaper and the news in Stanford.
Oh wow! Okay, Darlene, hold on for a minute. I want to bring our other co-host, MVP of who is the world's most valuable poet, and Robert. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you hear me, guys?
Hear you great. Robert, I got a question that I want to ask you. As the topic goes, death, untimely or timely, does your family know your wishes when they're sitting on the front row? And I'll refer to you for an untimely death. Youth that are out here dying, and dying at a rapid pace. The reason Em and I spoke off air, folks, before you called in, being my generation, I can only tell you what I've gone through and what I've seen. Em is a little bit more closer to the generation now, knows how to talk with them. And Em, how do you discuss death, an untimely death, with these children? Because they're basically still children in my eyes.
Yeah.
How do you talk with them?
Well, I think for me, it's about having an honest, authentic conversation with the youth about life itself, that when you speak life to them, it gives them more hope than anything else. And I think the language and of how we approach it has to be more about love and life and, just gratitude, to know that God has a purpose in our lives for a reason. And while we're here on this earth, it's our job to embrace it, to help be a better society, and to show young people that there's a way to really maneuver outside that immediate circle and not be a product of their environment, but be the environment of the product that they're in. And a lot of times, death is unpredictable. Sometimes it just comes out of nowhere. And one thing for sure is that you never question God when he takes someone home. Sometimes you may ask, why now? How can it be? He knows more than we do. But when that time happens, until that time happens, it's our job to treasure the life that he gave us and just be graciously thankful for what he blessed us with, and continue to cultivate to where the things that's not right in our world, we have to make it a better place. We need to put things in order to show young people that there's a better route, that we don't want them to just leave them out there, out in the rut, to where they become destructive, and then we got something else to talk about as far as shaming them for their poor decisions. We need to galvanize and uplift them and show them that there's a way out. We have to show them that there's better opportunities to, see beyond their surroundings, to see beyond 3 blocks in their neighborhood. Even as sad as it may sound, see outside a building, because sometimes they're so sheltered with technology, just sheltering them where it takes with their creativity. So we got to really challenge them to really see outside of their surroundings, right? Mm-hmm. So in that conversation about death, for me, I just speak about the reality of what life brings, and how if we could prevent certain deaths, as far as have they made smarter choices? Have they been around a better associates, as far as a better crowd, better friendship, as far as decision making? Have they avoided certain situations in life that's preventable? Then that's something that could be dealt with. But untimely death is unpredictable. All I know is that as long as you live here on this time, in this day and age, on earth, it's our job to not only just be graciously thankful, but have gratitude and be motivated to do something better that will give hope to the next generation that's coming. And when that time comes, when the Lord says time to go home, we don't ask questions, we just go home. But until that time happens, let's just hone in on what gifts that they have to offer and how can you salvage and maximize their full potential to be the greatest and be an asset, not a liability.
Okay, all right. I like that. Be an asset, not a liability. Leslie Santiago, I'm looking at the notes there, Dawn. She is asking about all these specialty funerals, and I know what she's talking about. And I have to go to Darlene, but Robert, this includes you.
Sure.
Darlene, as we know, the past 10 to 15 years, the youth that Robert and I are discussing now, also, I guess they want their funerals to try to be spectacular, but on a pauper's budget. We had, I know I've seen pictures of guys playing cards, playing their video games. I think Atohi said he saw a gentleman on his motorcycle at his funeral.
Yes.
How do you deal with, and I don't want to say crazy, because the fact is, these are a last wish, or that a person who is the guest of honor wanted. I've seen certain ones where people are rich enough, they get buried with their favorite car. So one man got buried with his Cadillac, and another guy got buried with his Rolls Royce. How do you accommodate these special funeral wishes, or the wishes of the family? That's what he liked to do, or that's what she liked to do.
Well, the first thing is that in Connecticut, we never had to bury anybody in a car, okay? Or we didn't have to bury anybody in a video game or anything like that.
Okay.
Basically, Connecticut is more low-key than Las Vegas or California or something like that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to understand that, too. Connecticut has certain laws where anything with gasoline and all and everything cannot be brought into a cemetery. Okay, certain types of appliances and all and everything cannot go in a cemetery because it can leak and it could also ruin other graves. Okay, that's another factor.
So wait a minute, hold up. You mean to tell me when you have people burying their loved ones, well, you know, he liked to drink Jack Daniels, or he liked to play video games, or with my father, we buried him with a cup of black pepper Campbell's soup. You mean to tell me that stuff actually cannot go in the grave with the body?
Well, no. I'm not talking canned goods, and I'm not talking like trinkets and all and everything. That can be buried with the body. Mm-hmm. But I'm talking about flammable stuff. I'm talking about stuff that can seep out of, like an engine and all and everything. Okay. That's what I'm talking about. Okay. But like Campbell soup, or as a matter of fact, I buried my dad with a stuffed monkey, mm-hmm. and we put candles, and certain candles that he liked, and we put a Luther Vandross CD that he loved. He loved Christmas, and we put Christmas balls in his casket, and my mother too. And mementos are fine, but if it gets into like chemicals and stuff like that they will hold back. Okay, all right. Now, MVP, I go to you.
Yeah.
Why is it that so many of our youth, they kind of embrace death? I know when I was a teenager growing up, I mean, the last thing in the world I really wanted to attend was a funeral. Uh-huh. It didn't until I got to be, I want to say about 17 or 18, and lost a person who was a part of the group that I ran with Death really didn't affect me because of the fact that she died of cancer. Why is it that our youth today are embracing death so quickly?
I think what it is, so you have to look into the account of the fact that for them right now, in this day and age, it has become normative that death is expected, where they become desensitized to the fact that they expect bad things to happen because they never experienced goodness around them, as far as in their immediate household, as far as what's going on in school, as far as what goes on in their neighborhood. They have witnessed traumatic experiences at an early age, and no one hasn't taken the time out to mentor them to say life is much more than gun violence in your neighborhood. Life is much more than a jailhouse, let's say on North Avenue. Life has much more to give than seeing someone buried at an early age. It's our job as adults to expose young people outside of their surroundings. Talk to them about what it's like to go to college. Talk to them what it's like to go to job corps. Talk to them what it's like to experience professions of many professions, entrepreneurship. You have to expose young people of other varieties of life that's being presented other than the obvious negativity that's in their immediate circle. Because a lot of times all they see is violence and hatred and gunfires and shootings and gangs. In their minds, they're going to think that's all life is, and it's not so. You have to expose and mentor and show them and create and educate opportunities. You have to highlight on different outlets that will show them that they can live past 18, that will uplift and inspire and be a milestone to other kids who don't think that it's possible. But there is possibilities, that all things are possible. We just got to show them. And you show them by exposing them to other things other than what they see in their immediate circle.
Okay, and I got to refer back to Tupac, brilliant young man, but we all know he died at the age of 24. Biggie Smalls, same thing. Or the notorious B.I.G., same thing. He died basically in a hail of bullets. How can we say, yes, embrace the artist for his art, but don't live the life that he lived? Or you'll follow that same path of untimely death. The young man was brilliant. I talked about it in the show, the Legacy Show. He went to the Performing Arts High School in New York, where basically has a strict curriculum and prepares you for the world of performing arts, the highs and the lows. We saw him. I remember seeing him in a different world. I remember seeing him in the movie Juice. I remember seeing the last movie. I remember seeing him in the last movie that he did with John Belushi's brother. Where he played a cop. I think it was Gridlock it was called. I mean, the guy was multi-talented, but he could not get that street, and pardon my language, folks, bullshit out of his lifestyle. And we all know what happened.
Right.
How can we get this? Wait a minute. There's a part B. How can we get our youth? Like a violent video game to a certain point. But don't use that as a training guide to how you're going to pull a drive-by or how you're going to put somebody else's family on the front row. Why? It's just a game. But these kids consider it real life. I used to laugh at former Senator Lieberman because I said, how could this guy deal with these violent video games right now? And we have other things going on in society. And then as an older person, Uncle Charlie's Corner, I could kind of see where he was going with, because there's too much violence out there. How And I understand what you said, MVP. How can we get them to reformat their mind where they start thinking it's not cool to be dead at the age of 16 or the age of 21 or the age of 28, when there is so much life out there that it's cool to grow up as an older man who's bouncing his grandkids on his knee after he has seen his children graduate high school, go on to higher learning. And it doesn't even have to be about education. To be successful as a mechanic, as a salesman, as a teacher who works with kids, as a mentor who's doing something for their community in a positive aspect. Not blowing a kid away on a street corner because he just decided to go out and get some air, and you're mad at somebody because they might have stepped on your foot, and you think it's a disrespect. How can we get them to reprogram their minds?
Uncle Charlie, you know how you do that? People like you got to speak up and speak out against the violence. It's people like me that has a job to do to speak up and speak out against the violences. It's the duty of church members that go to church to speak up and speak against the hate that's going on in our society. It's our job as advocates, as ambassadors, as God's ambassadors, to speak up and speak out and continue to raise awareness to minimize the inclination of violences happening. It's our job. And I'm not saying that one's better than the other. We're just different then. But we have to fight for the same cause, which is to uplift the youth to be better than what they was before. And I've always said this before, and I'll say this again. I always tell my young men and women that I counsel, do not become what you despise. Because at the end of the day, your legacy has been written already. What do you want to be when it's all said and done? So it's our job to continue to speak out and teach, and to teach to reach. It's our job to uplift and inspire. It's our job to show them how to. Because for me, I'm just speaking for me on this part, Uncle Charlie, is that if we do not speak up and speak out and bring opportunities and bring awareness, and we seen that it's wrong, but we don't say nothing, we just as guilty as those who committed transgression in the first place.
I agree. And folks, I should have said this disclaimer before we started the show. These are my opinions. All right. Do not hold this against UDR Productions, because there might be some things that we don't agree on. But I'm going to go even deeper right now. And Darlene, I want you to chime in too, because this question is for the both of you. And I'm going to get to some more of the questions I see here on the screen. One thing that was taught to me at an early age, and I know the same thing for you, Darlene, was that you had to have a love of your community. That basically when you went to your friend's house or a new friend's house, the first thing that was asked out of the parent's mouth, or maybe the first thing that was asked out of the grandparent's mouth, was who you were and what church did you go to. And they would rather have you basically kick their dog than say that you did not belong to church. It was a big thing. And it didn't make a difference if you were Catholic. It did not make a difference if you were Polish. It did not make a difference if you were Italian, Jewish, Haitian, Jamaican, whatever. As long as you belonged to a house of God. And when you said that, you were welcomed into that home. The question,
very true.
Now the question is, with so many of our churches, I remember when a church could leave its doors unlocked. A person could go to the church and pray at 1 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning if they wanted to. Put something in the needy box. But now, even our own houses of worship have to be locked, have to have a security system like a bank, because these children, and sometimes not children, find out that they think it's easier to rob a house of God
Yep.
than it is to basically worship to that same God. They're trying to put a quick fix on their way of life, not realizing that they are already on that path to cause their own downfall or untimely death. And that's bringing me into another topic, which I'm going to bring you both into.
Mm-hmm.
MVP,
Okay, well,
you alluded to the raising of our children and how we had to be there as mentors and bring them back into Christ's house, so to speak. Darlene, I brought you in because you are the other business that has to deal with a grieving family, whether it was an untimely death or whether it was a timely. Everybody is born and everybody dies. It's just a fact of life. But
true.
what I am going to say, when are people, and I'm saying this basically as strict as I am, and I hope there's some politicians out there. My name is Uncle Charlie. My Christian name is Charles Treadway. Get in contact with me. I'm the easiest person that you could find. When is it that our politicians are going to get down off of their pedestals and come down to the communities and actually do something to help fund these schools? So the activities that I grew up with, a school being open late at night, so you could play basketball, or you could play with other children, or now since video games are the thing that entertains or also teaches our children. So you can go there and meet with other parents and have your play dates or whatever. Okay? They used to do it 3 times a week in the community of Stanford that I grew up in. My father was a head custodian. He used to have me come over there with him and I'd shoot baskets. And then when it was time to wrap up, helped him sweep the floors. Okay? And those kids appreciated the fact is that their community cared about them. It wasn't all that you had to pay all this money for Little League and everything like that. That there were different strains to help you. But the one thing that the politicians knew back then, if we take care of our youth, they will turn out to be good tax-paying, because you got to throw in the money part. They'll grow up to be good tax-paying citizens of their community, and they will respect the communities that they grow in. You won't have fights with the police. You won't have fights, well, so to speak, with other children over who controls one block. You won't have fights trying to protect people while they're in church, trying to get to their cars after they leave church. You won't have all these things. And when a person does have a problem, whether it be alcohol, whether it be mental, whether it be drug-induced, that there will be programs there to help them. I've seen so many damn programs cut because the fact is that they don't cut their raises. They won't do that. But the only time that they come around to see you is when it's election time. The other 2 years or the other 4 years, they don't want nothing to do with you. And I'm saying that to the current administration on down. I'm even talking to the school board. Get out there and do something. These children need help. And this is not just the community of Bridgeport. This is all over this nation. One man in D.C. can't do it himself. And I'm telling you right now, and I'm talking about the 2 sitting there for 6 years. And you all know the senators' names too. Yes, it's nice to make sure that somebody has a scooter to be able to go around and get out of their house. Yes, it's nice if you appeal to a landlord to turn up the heat or make sure that the elevator in the building is fixed. But what are you doing to make sure that once those people get out of that building or get out of that house and try to enjoy themselves either by sitting in a park or going somewhere, just walking the streets as a human being, as a citizen of that community, that they can do it safely. Because I'm pretty sure your neighborhoods don't have the same problem. Darlene.
Yes. Well, I know one thing. When I was bringing up my nieces and nephews, they were not allowed to be out late at night. They were told to do what we said and all and everything. And the generation today has totally turned against adults. They have a one-set mind. I've noticed it numerous times, even when you're on the bus or you're on the train.
Good point.
And if a woman is standing there, the young man would not get up. And all at once, the conductor comes through and he says, "Excuse me, there's a woman here. She's disabled. You need to get up."
Mm-hmm.
He says, "I'm not getting up for her. She can stand." And I remember the conductor taking him his elbow and escorting him out, and he says, "Get out of the train."
Mm-hmm.
Also, even on buses, the kids feel as though that because they're young and all and everything, they deserve all the seats. And it's not just one race; it's all races.
That's right.
Okay, even when you go into a grocery store and you're in line and people cut in front of you because they feel as though that they're granted that.
Yes.
Even when you're walking the mall, they just run into you, they bump into you and all and everything just because you're older and you can't walk as fast. There's a lot of wrong with this generation today. They need to be taught. They need to have the common sense that everybody is equal, and that's the problem with this world. If these Republicans and Democrats would work together, we can have a better nation and clean up the act. And I'll tell you the truth, another thing, we wouldn't have all these young gentlemen and girls in jail.
That's right.
If they were taught from the beginning, and I'm going to say it, I had a situation with my niece that she was from a out of wedlock relationship. I brought that kid up, but my family doesn't want to talk about that. They just want to talk about what the good someone else did, but they don't want to talk about the bad.
Okay. Well,
this is what's wrong with this generation.
You don't have to go into that. We know that there are personal issues that every family encounters over a lifetime. Go ahead, Rob. MVP, you want to say something?
Yeah, no, I'm just listening into as far as what's been said, as far as what's being digested. So I didn't want to just say something without listening first. So I just wanted to preach, just acknowledge and say, I appreciate you guys speaking up about it. From my perspective, I'm gonna say it like this. And again, I think it's not about right or wrong. It's about just taking it from a different angle and just coming up with solutions in that regard. For me, a child's never asked to be born. And a child does not wake up one morning to say, I'm going to just act out, be malicious. They have been taught from experiences, from parents who have not shown what's best for their interests, and they have not been the leaders to set by example. So it does bring challenge in that regard. And in some cases, there are kids out there who are acting like knuckleheads and they act malicious and they act out because of what they experienced in their life. And in that regard, they're screaming out for help. All this acting out and this mischievous behaviors, they're screaming for help because they don't know what to do because that's why they act out. I always say this, and I say this then, I say this now. Every person has something good in them, and we have to be able to maximize and salvage their full potential and how great they can be. It's just all about meeting them where they're at. I'm not saying act like them, but meet them halfway where you can identify with what they've gone through in their life. And I believe that they can relate more to someone that can identify and relate to what they've gone through. So when they have that kind of kinship and connection with someone that has been there and has done that and can show there's a way out of it in spite of what they committed at the time, then changing their thought process to look at things from a different angle, to look at things from a different perspective. So, yes, I agree that this generation has been lost as far as values, human decency, moral integrity, dignity, etc., etc. But at the same time, the older folks that's been around for years, that has outlived them for 10, 20, 30 plus years, what have folks done to bridge that gap? What have folks have done to say, let me introduce you to something cool. Let me introduce you to something that's unique. Let me introduce you to something that's going to help catapult them to think that there's more to life than 2 blocks around my way where all I see is gang initiations where Bloods and Crips are going back and forth, gun shooting, gun violence, and creating a whole wild, wild west of this era. So there has to be a gap that needs to be bridged in as far as learning from each other, where a young person can teach an older person something different that's unique, just like an older person can teach a young person something unique and different. And I think what it comes down to is love. What it comes down to is language as far as what you're saying. Because let me tell you something, words have power. And the Bible talks about death and life. Words have power. So if you speak words that impact in an inspirational way, their thought process going to think a lot different. But when you speak death and you speak negatively in such a manner that's derogatory, that's full of negativity and toxicity, then that's how their mindset is going to be because of what you're saying to them. Because, like, again, words are weapons. And if you know how to use them right, it's going to impact them in a way that will turn the worst person that you could think of to someone that's going to be more of a model citizen. If you think back in the Bible how Moses was a murderer, look how God used him. He used a murderer and he changed him. Look how Paul was used. He was a persecutor and look how he changed him. So what I'm saying is that back then is no different than today, except the era has changed and times has evolved. I get all that. But the idea remains intact as far as where someone was before and where they are now. And what came down to was the teaching, the mentorship, the investment, the time put in. Because believe you me, when a person sees that you care for them, I'm telling you as a living witness, they're not going to act out to that degree how a lot of folks will perceive them to be.
Okay, good points, MVP. All right, like I said, this is going to be a 2-part show. This all can't be solved in an hour. But I did want to read something real quick. I have my Bible to it, so I would not forget. And this is coming out of John. And it's coming out of John chapter 3, verses 16 on down. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. Mm-hmm. For God sent not his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved.
Yeah.
He that believeth on him is not condemned, but he that believeth not is condemned already, because he hath not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God. And this is the condemnation, that the light is come into the world, and men love darkness rather than light, because their deeds were evil. For everyone that doeth evil hateth the light, neither cometh to the light, lest his deeds should be reproved. But he that doeth truth cometh to the light, that his deeds may be manifest, that they are wrought in God. In other words, get your acts together. Because one way or another, when it is your time for your family to sit on that front row, and as many good words as they might try to think to say about you, you better change what you're doing now, because I don't know. Now, from my own experience, and we're going to do a topic on it, when my heart was out of my body and the machines were doing the work, yes, I was hovering around my body. It was an out-of-body experience. But I only remember parts of that. I did know that I had to atone for certain things that I did in my life. that I was not ready to go home. And by the gracious goodness of God and my donor Heidi, that I was provided with a heart to continue these things that God had already put me on a path to do.
Mm-hmm.
I did not want to talk about death tonight, but I felt I had to, because there are too many of our youth that embrace it just like they're playing a video game, or just like hearing somebody got shot, killed, ran over, in jail, or murdered. It doesn't mean a thing to them. It's just like water rolling off a duck's back.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't have that, folks. You can't. It's not normal. I'm not saying being afraid of death is normal, but at that particular age, you're damn right you should be afraid of death. That would be the worst thing that I would want on my mind, is somebody trying to kill me, or if somebody had a target on my back. That should either tell you, one, you're living your life wrong. Two, you're living your life wrong. Three, you're living your life wrong. Like Robert alluded to early, you need to get to church. You need to find what we know and we experience. It's not because we are people that are older. It's because that we have lived a little bit more life than you have. And our experiences are trying to make your negative experiences a lot better. Let me show you a couple of things. I don't know if you can see that so well because of the webcam. That is myself, and that is who they call the godfather of rap, Kool Herc. All you young kids out there playing your beats or coming up with music, this is the one that you should emulate. This man is old. He's in his 60s, almost 70. One of our good friends out there, Terrible T, his Christian name is Tyrone Dunmore, introduced me to that man. And it's nice that he decided to come back and help the youth. Unfortunately, because of the COVID, he can't do that right now. But I'm pretty sure once the rap weekend is held again in Bridgeport, and I'm pretty sure he'll be there. Another man is this. I love this, watching this guy play baseball. I met him at a ceremony, a men's conference in West Hartford, church conference, because he talked about the experiences of being a professional baseball player, what drugs had did to his body, ruined his marriages, caused his homes to be, caused him to be kicked out of his homes. But now look at him, got a big smile on his face. The man lost part of his intestine. He had colon cancer. I'm talking about Darryl Strawberry.
Right.
He doesn't care about the Hall of Fame. Yes, he was on track to get the numbers to get in the Hall of Fame. But what he cares about now is saving our youth and saving those who have walked away from God. What God did for him, what God did for me, God can do for you. Those are the kind of pictures I want displayed at my homecoming ceremony. And I hope it's not for a long time, but that's a cool funeral, a timely funeral, when somebody can look back at a reflection of your life and say, my God, Uncle Charlie did that. Oh my God, I didn't know he knew that. Oh my God, I didn't know he knew him. That's cool. That's cool, playing with your grandchildren, great-grandchildren. And some of you out there, you still have your great-great-great-grandmother alive. My friend lost his father about 3 weeks ago. Lost his father at the age of 80, unfortunately to cancer. But Mr. McDonald's mother is still alive in Costa Rica and just turned 106. 106 years old. Could you imagine that? What that woman has seen, the birth of new technologies. But she's back in Costa Rica, living the simple life. A lot of my family members from Stanford have moved back down south. My cousin Angela, she ran a store in the Trumbull Mall, a lady store called Stewart's. And she was very proud to do that because she was making her way in the world. Her intended husband, matter of fact, lived with my family, Richard, while I was out living the world too, but in a different way. But those were the days when family took care of family. If you were doing something, you can get on the phone and call auntie or call uncle or call your cousin. You know, just call your family and see if it was all right with them if you stayed with them a while. That was so beautiful. It was so beautiful. Oh, thank you, brother. Thank you, but not now. Dog just walked in here with some barbecue chicken, and my God, it looks delicious.
Oh, wow. You ain't offering brother nothing? That's all right.
But that's the way. That's the way. See, this man was raised the right way. If I could take from the adage of our old show. Folks, it doesn't have to be that much misery out there. It does not have to be so much violence out there. I know it's tough out there. I was out of work for 9 months. On the verge of losing my car, on the verge of losing my apartment, back in bills. I know it's tough. I never turned to drugs to sell them to get me out of debt. And believe me, I've probably been in debt most of my life. And I'll be 58 November 1st. I've said it many times before. I've said it on this show. I have probably done more things than the average person has done. I've met people that the average person probably has not met. And I've been places that the average person probably hasn't gone to in their lifetime. But the fact is, I thank God for those memories. I thank my parents for the education that they gave me. I thank my church that I was brought up in, Bethlehem Church on 150 Fairfield Avenue, which is still there today in the city of Stanford. I thank the other two churches that I've been affiliated with. One was Union Baptist Church on Newfield Avenue. Dr. Reverend Robert Perry was or still is, he's senior pastor. And I know Reverend Perry's got to be in his middle 80s, maybe close to 90 now. And he was a civil rights advocate that most people don't really realize. But that's a part of my history, my legacy. Gospel Light Community Church, which is now under the second generation, Pastor Joshua Miller. His father started that church 37 years ago, I believe.
1982 is when he started it.
1982, that's right. And there was an interim pastor, Pastor Pedro Vasquez, who the man came and saw me when I was, him and his wife had come and saw me in the hospital when I was at Yale awaiting a heart transplant. Did not know what the outcome of my life was going to be. But for people praying for me, for people praying to God that God spare my life, I'm here today. I'm here tonight talking to you. That's the wonderfulness of God. I've said it before. When God does things to you, when he comes into your mind, into your body, into your soul, you just want to spread the good news. You just want to let people know that you too have a chance. There's another friend of mine I grew up with. Darlene and I dropped off flowers and a box of candy for her because she's been through a lot of health issues in her life. Did not know if she was going to see again. Did not know if she'd have the use of her shoulder. But I knew, and God knew. All her eye problems have disappeared. Her shoulder problems. She still feels a little pain, twinge, but she's going to have the use of that shoulder. Why? Because God knew her plan. He knew what he wanted her to do. And she was named after the mother of Jesus, Mary. Folks, there are a lot of things in your lives that you can change if you want to. You just got to make that first step. And when you make that first step, and some of you who have been part of a 12-step program, does not have to be drugs. There's a lot of 12-step programs for people. You know you have to make that first step. My life has become unmanageable. I cannot do it myself. God, will you please help me? Let him do the rest. Now, I'm not saying that it's going to be solved right away. Like anything, you have to work at it. You have to have a plan. You have to have a strategy. Because believe me, the devil got one. And as you see, with all this violence and all this frustrated people, all these frustrated people walking around, that it seems like the devil's plan is succeeding. But like all plans or devious plans, God wins. God triumphs over adversity.
Hey, Uncle Chuck, can I interject and say something real quick?
Go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
All right. You mentioned something about dark and light, and it just took me to a verse on the book of John 8:12, when the Bible says that, for he is the light of the world. Those who follow him will never be in darkness. And I think that's just one of the most essential scriptures in the Bible, because there is dark times right now. We highlighted and talked about that, not just tonight, but on previous shows. And what it comes down to is we have to live it as true believers, that when there's chaos and dark times in a person's life, and that we live the life of Christ, and there's life and there's light, that no matter what's going on, that we are at peace, they're going to want to know why. They're going to want to see where's it coming from. And that's when the ministry happens. That's when the opportunity to be a blessing happens. This is where an opportunity to preach the gospel happens. It's because we're living it. So a lot of times folks are quick to say, they're quick to claim it. But are you really living it? Amen. You know what I mean? So what it comes down to is the fact that we have to set by examples, I said before, and we have to live it. Because like I said before, we may live in this world, but we're not of the world. And there's a big difference in discerning the difference of the two. Right. So it's important to just make sure that, when we encounter folks who's coming from a different reality of what's happening in their world, we have to show them that there's a better way out. And Amen. Christ is the way out.
Amen. Amen. We're going to get to wrap this up. And MVP, I appreciate all your knowledge, kicking the knowledge, letting the people know about the love of God, what he's done for you.
Absolutely. And appreciate you having me on.
Oh, no, brother. No. Anytime.
You know how we do it, baby. Listen to this part. There's not a point in time in our lives that, and like I said, I didn't catch the beginning part because I was actually discipling a brother of Christ of mine while he was having the show. So I was wanting to just put that out there in that regard. But
I was going to ask you. I was not going to let you off the hook. I want you to promote that show.
Listen. I think that's going to let me off the hook. That's why I'm glad I got a chance to get on to just, speak up and speak out about this topic. And, there's one thing I can honestly tell you, Uncle Charlie, is that there's never a point in time in our life that we can have these heartfelt conversations like this where it gets intense at times, but we got to just be firm and just really have that passion to understand what we're dealing with, but most of all, have solutions to address the matter at hand. So there's never a point in time where we don't have these kind of conversations Because like I said before, without any struggle, there's no progression.
That's right.
So we have to have these kind of uncomfortable conversations. But until we get to that point of, progression, then it's just going to remain stagnant. And that's not how I do it, and neither do you. And that's the point of what I'm saying, is that we have to continue to, not just keep the conversation going, but really come up with solutions. And we're coming up with the solutions. And I'm not saying it's one way, but there's ways out.
That's right. That's right. Thank you very much, brother, on those very profane points.
All right. Definitely.
Say the name. Hold up. Say the name of the name of the show again that you're a part of, and how people could view it.
Absolutely.
No, I'm just saying, say the name of the show again.
Oh, absolutely. So listen. So just real quick, guys, once again, you heard from Uncle Charlie. Please, continue to support this brother, because like I said, man, he brings such a unique perspective, and, he's a one of God's children, just like all of us is. Definitely hit that hard subscribe, like, comment, and share button, and support UDR Production Go Love Team. I have my show, MVP, Being Politically Correct, on Tuesday nights. You have Uncle Charlie's Corner on Wednesday nights. This is a ministry ordained by God. Like I said, we may not always have it right all the time, but we live by the Spirit, and we just got to speak our hearts out to just continue to inspire. And that's what it's all about. So just continue to subscribe, like, and share, and just share the messages, because someone needs to hear it, no matter who it is.
That's right. That's right. God bless you, brother. Love you.
God bless you. Have a great time. We're going to talk soon. God bless y'all.
Take care. God bless. Watch his show too, MVP. Remarkable young man. The first time I heard him speak was in church, and I was looking for somebody to take over my podcast, and that was about 4 years ago. And as you see, me and the brother are still friends together. MVP, or his Christian name, Robert Velez Jr. God bless him. He is a young man that is doing a lot of things. But I got to go to my other half now, the one that how could I say, puts up with a lot of me. Picks up my clothes when I leave certain places.
Thanks for saying that.
the one that cooks spectacular meals for me, and basically when I need to be grounded sometimes, and I need that friend to talk to when things are bothering me. And Darlene, I want you to know how much I appreciate you, how much I love you, and the fulfillment that you not only brought to my heart, but you brought to my life.
Thank you. I would like to read something, if that's okay with you, real quick.
Fine. Go ahead.
Grief is a response to the loss of a loved one. Mm-hmm. Everyone handles grief differently, to very somber and to uncontrollable. Grief is like a snowflake. No one is alike. Mm-hmm. There is a timetable for grief. And over time, it lessens, but we still have it in our hearts, the loss of a loved one. You can't plot your reaction on grief. It was told to me by my professor that it is like a roller coaster. It takes you up and down until it levels off, until you accept the death of a loved one. That's what my professor at American Academy in New York City told me. Mm-hmm. And I remember these words like it was yesterday, but it's 39 years later. So that pretty much tells you how old I am. So, but
you're still young at heart. You're still young at heart. What Darlene is referring to, McAllister, those of you who do not know that part of the business, that is a funeral directing academy, and also teaches you the art of embalming. Her father was one of the foremost people in this field. You hear plastic surgeries, it's called reconstructive surgery. I had a friend of mine who passed some time ago. He was an untimely death. And unfortunately, he went to the windshield of a truck and hit the exit sign. And his face and body had to be reconstructed because the family wanted a viewing. And he did that. It was basically like putting a puzzle back together again, or like Humpty Dumpty when he fell off the wall. He's putting all those pieces, and her father was the man that they called when nobody else had that gift of allowing a family the process of being able to say goodbye to a loved one. So kudos to my soon-to-be father-in-law in heaven, her father and my father and mother. I can't. Our families were very close back then, and I'm pretty sure they're looking down from heaven, smiling. Because hopefully, with the pandemic, we will be. Well, we're going to tie the knot, but hopefully, we just want to have a little bit of a celebration. I want to also. So I know I've been trying to wrap this up for the past, but when you talk about a subject like that, and I want to thank everybody who responded on the live chat. Yes, this is a very difficult subject to get through, but please believe me, if I got through it, if Darlene, whose business that was to get through it. Matter of fact, let me ask you this one quick question, Darlene, before you get off the line. Tell folks how important it is to make sure that you have the right funeral home. And the reason that I am going to say this, let me explain first before I get Darlene's opinion. There was a funeral home in Stamford that a lot of people use. It was an African-American funeral home. About 4 or 5 generations of my family were buried out of that funeral home. A lot of relatives. A lot of people that are watching this streaming segment know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to mention name or anything. But funeral homes only have one shot to get it right. One shot. I'm kind of happy that there are a little bit more, as you can say, as it's more of as a business. They're buying up the name, not the actual so-called family-run funeral home. They're buying the name. And my father lost his baby brother, my Uncle Ray, back in 2000. Another, I will say, untimely death, because my uncle liked to imbibe. It was devastating having to speak on my father's behalf on the person that was not only my uncle, he was my running buddy, he was my mentor. I could talk to anything about him. He was my protector sometimes, because I had gotten into an accident with my father's car. It wasn't my fault. I swear it wasn't my fault. Somebody had ran into me. But instead of calling my father first, I called my uncle, and he smoothed it out with my father. But having to discuss the arrangements for my Uncle Ray Treadway was probably one of the most hardest things I had to do, besides doing that for my own father. My father just handed me a checkbook and just said, do what you have to do. You know what I want. And those of you who are juniors, or the third or the fourth, or like George Foreman's family, could be the 8th or 9th George Foreman. It's a responsibility that you go through. I remember one friend of mine buried his mother 1 week, and 7 days later we turned around. We're back in the same church burying his father. But like I said, you only got one shot to do it right. With my Uncle Ray, who was also an Elk brother and a Masonic brother, we got correspondence from all over the country. Flowers, the notes, monetary contributions, people sending telegrams. All of those items were lost. Did you hear what I said? Lost.
Yeah, I heard.
And well, so the people out there can know what I'm talking about. You only got one shot. And the question is to you, Darlene, and my father had in his will, he was not to
Right.
be buried out of that funeral home. And I respected
Right.
his wishes. I
Mhm.
respected his wishes. They, by the way, found the book conveniently when they found out they didn't get the funeral. But
Right.
Darlene, like you heard me say, this is a business. How does a funeral director or a funeral home director, embalmer, how do you make sure that you dot all the I's and you cross all the T's so that a family does not have to worry? And how do you basically let others that are attending that funeral when it goes to the graveside know that you were the ones that were responsible for doing a good job?
Well, first of all, you have to get a very trustworthy funeral home. I'm going to be very frank. I don't know if you remember, it was in the early 2000s, funeral home in New Haven was accepting bodies, and he was stacking them in the garage
Yes, I remember
in
that.
Stanford.
Mhm.
And he wasn't embalming at all, just accepting all the money and wasn't burying them. So that's number one. The first thing you really should do is go on to the website and read about the funeral home and all and everything. And usually people put comments about the funeral home and rate the funeral home too. Also, the Better Business Bureau has a list regarding all funeral homes too. That's two things. But first of all, when you have a funeral, as a very large funeral and all and everything, the funeral directors and their staff is responsible to take any of the envelopes, mail that comes in, flowers and all and everything, and take a full inventory of everything.
Okay.
And it is locked into a book, and it is put into the safe every night. So if there was any envelopes, they would just count the envelopes, put them in a bag, and bring it and put it into the safe.
Mhm.
That's what I used to do. Okay. And I would log, say, like, if there was, like, this is just a crazy amount, 120 cards. We would count 120 cards and put it in. And then the morning of the funeral, before we would proceed to church, we would take all the bags that are collected, all the cards off the arrangements the night before,
Okay.
and put everything in envelopes and put them in the bag and lock it up. And then the morning of the funeral, put it in the trunk of the limo for the family. And we would make sure, and we would go through everything after the funeral was over with the family and let them know, this is what you received. These are the envelopes.
Okay.
This is that. You got 5 baskets of fruit. You got 10 trays of cookies.
Beautiful.
We would do that.
So what you're saying basically is that you take a direct inventory of everything. Now, go ahead.
Yes.
Okay, so word of mouth, that's another thing about your business, right?
Yes. Word of mouth. Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so check with your families. Even if you attend a funeral, ask the funeral director for their card. I'm pretty sure that they carry many. And they will look. Usually, I know at the graveside, and the reason I'm rushing is because I've got about 90 seconds. Darlene, I want to thank you very much for
You're welcome.
your information. I'm pretty sure from reading all the notes, people appreciate the business or the service that you provided. As you see behind me, a sign, which is very, very key. If your loved one is in the hospital and somebody approaches you to consider to donate their organs because of they might not make it, please donate life. Okay, honoring organ donors, eye and tissue donors. Okay, that is why I am here today. Okay, because my donor Heidi, a very long time ago, decided that she wanted to be a donor. And if you're at the motor vehicle department, All you have to do is just have them check that little heart, and you could be a donor too. God bless you all. I want to thank you for my first time on the experience of going live. This is Uncle Charlie's Corner. To my man working the board, dog, God bless you. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm about to chow into this chicken right now. I just didn't have no napkins. And I didn't want sauce on my face in front of the people TV land out there. God bless you. God keep you. Until next week, this is Uncle Charlie's Corner. See you later. You think I'm kidding, man? I ain't winning sauce all over my face.